Welcome to Her Subconscious Blueprint, your no BS space for subconscious healing, bold breakthroughs, and becoming the woman who actually lives the life she dreams about. I'm Jenn, hypnotherapist, mindset coach, and your new healing hype girl. Today we're talking about what comes after the ending. So I shared a pretty vulnerable update on my life last week, and I want to talk about what comes after the ending. Not the logistics, not the decisions, not the conversations that already happened, but the quiet part, the part that no one prepares you for, the part where the noise dies down and you're left feeling alone with yourself. Healing after endings, it's not linear. It doesn't look like relief followed by clarity, followed by peace. Most of the time it looks like waves, like one moment feeling grounded and clear and the next feeling tender, unsure, or unexpectedly emotional. And that doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It means you're human. We often assume that once we choose truth, everything should immediately feel lighter. That once we make the brave decision, that grief should disappear. That healing should move into a straightforward line towards feeling better. But healing after an ending doesn't rush you forward. It asks you to stay present with what's been stirring up, to stay connected to yourself when there's no one else to orientate it, to stay gentle when old coping mechanisms try to resurface. Because endings don't just end relationships, they end identities, they end routines, they end patterns, they end roles that you didn't even realize you were playing. They end the version of you who knew how to be in that dynamic. And when the version of you dissolves, there's a moment where you don't quit. You that version dissolves. There's a moment where you don't quite know who you are yet. That space can feel unsettling. You might notice urges to distract yourself, to fill the silence, to rush into the next thing so you don't have to feel the emptiness. You might feel grief for things you didn't expect to miss, or relief mixed with sadness that didn't make any logical sense. And I want you to hear this clearly. None of this means that you're failing at healing. That is healing. Healing after the ending is about learning how to be with yourself without abandoning yourself, without rushing to fix the feeling, without telling yourself that you should be over it by now, without comparing your timeline to anyone else's. For me, healing hasn't been about erasing the love or minimizing what mattered. It's been about letting the truth settle into my body, letting myself feel quiet, letting myself notice what comes up when there's no longer a shared rhythm to move inside of, letting myself rebuild safety from the inside out. Because when a relationship ends, especially one rooted in care and love, your nervous system doesn't immediately know that it's safe. It used to orientate around the other person, another energy, another cadence. And when that disappears, your system goes looking for familiarity. That's why healing isn't just emotional. It's neurological. Your body needs reassurance. Your system needs consistency. Your inner world needs gentleness. This season of healing is not about becoming stronger. It's about becoming softer without collapsing. It's about letting yourself be tender without becoming lost, about learning how to hold yourself when there's no one else doing it for you, in the same way as before. And that's not something that you rush. One of the most important things I've learned in this season is that after an ending, your nervous system is looking for something familiar to latch onto. Not because you're weak, not because you're dependent, but because orientation equals safety. Because familiarity equals safety. For a long time, my nervous system knew how to regulate inside a shared life, a shared rhythm, shared energy, even when things weren't aligned. There was a familiarity to it, a predictability. And when that disappears, your body doesn't immediately celebrate freedom. It looks for a ground. It looks for stability. That's why healing after an ending isn't about forcing independence or proving how okay you are. It's about rebuilding internal safety slowly and intentionally. For me, that has looked like creating new rituals, new anchors, new ways of coming home to myself when the quiet feels louder than expected. Simple things like morning routines that are just mine, evenings that don't require explanations, moments where I checked in with my body instead of my thoughts. Because your thoughts will try to rush you. They'll say things like, you should be further along. You should feel clearer by now. You made the choice, so why does it still hurt? But healing doesn't work on a schedule. Your heart doesn't close a chapter just because your mind understands what it needed to end. And that's where compassion matters. Compassion for yourself. Healing after an ending requires you to stop treating tenderness like a problem. Tenderness is not weakness. Tenderness is openness. Tenderness is your system learning how to fill without bracing. There were moments where I noticed myself wanting to jump ahead, to imagine the next version of my life, to just fast forward to the part where everything felt settled and certain again. And each time I had to gently bring myself back. Because rushing is just another form of avoidance. Avoidance of grief. Avoidance of uncertainty. Avoidance of being with myself in the in-between. This season is not about rushing to the next chapter. It's about letting this one integrate. That means allowing memories to surface without clinging to them. Allowing sadness to come without telling yourself it means you made the wrong choice. Allowing joy to exist alongside grief without feeling confused or guilty. You could miss someone and still know the relationship is complete. Those truths are not opposite. They coexist. Another thing that surprised me in this healing process was how loneliness does show up. It's not showing up as emptiness, but as unfamiliar. I wasn't lonely because I was alone. I was lonely because I was learning a new way of being. There's a difference. Loneliness says something is missing. Unfamiliarity says something is changing. And your nervous system needs time to adjust to that change. That's why it's so important not to rush into filling the space. Not with another relationship, not with constant distractions, not with over busyness. Space is not something to be feared. Space is where you meet yourself again. And meeting yourself after an ending can feel awkward at first. You notice things you like. You notice things you avoided. You notice how you soothe yourself. You notice where you still reach outward instead of inward. None of this is wrong. It's just information. It's awareness and curiosity. Healing after the ending is about staying curious instead of judgmental. Asking, what is this feeling trying to show me instead of, how do I get rid of this? Asking, what do I need right now instead of, what should I be over by now? That shift alone changes everything. Because when you stop fighting your healing, it starts to unfold naturally and slowly, almost in predictability at first, sometimes steadiness. You start trusting yourself in new ways. You start feeling more grounded in your own company. You start realizing that being alone doesn't mean being unheld. It means you're learning how to hold yourself. And this is one of the most powerful skills that you can develop. One of the most unexpected parts of healing after an ending is realizing that love doesn't disappear. It just changes shape. For a long time, I thought that healing meant choosing my heart, protecting myself, becoming more guarded, so I wouldn't feel this deeply again. But that isn't healing. That's armor. And armor might keep pain out for a while, but it also keeps love out, connection out, and life out. Healing after the ending isn't about hardening. It's about learning how to stay open without abandoning yourself. That is a very different skill. It's learning how to feel without attaching, how to care without clinging, how to love without losing yourself. And that starts with redefining what love actually means to you now. Because the version of love that you knew before was shaped by who you were then. By your wounds, your coping strategies, your nervous system patterns, your inner child. When you heal, love has to evolve. Love no longer looks like overgiving. It no longer looks like staying quiet to keep the peace. It no longer looks like sacrificing parts of yourself to feel chosen. Love becomes spacious. It becomes honest. It becomes grounded in self-trust. And that shift doesn't happen overnight. There were moments where I felt myself wanting to reach back into what was familiar, not because it was right, but because it was known, because it once felt safe, because my nervous system remembered how to exist there. And each time I had to pause, I had to ask myself a different question. Am I reaching for connection or am I reaching for familiarity? Because familiarity can feel like love when you're healing, but they're not the same. Love expands you. Familiarity keeps you comfortable. Healing after the ending taught me how important it was to trust myself before trusting anyone else, to listen to my body, to honor my boundaries without explaining them, to move at a pace that felt regulated instead of rushed. Trusting myself first doesn't mean closing myself off from love. It means I no longer need love to validate me. It means I'm not searching for someone to complete me because I'm learning how to stand whole on my own. And from that place, love becomes a choice, not a need. That's a powerful shift. It changes who you're drawn to. It changes what you tolerate. It changes how you show up. Healing doesn't erase the desire for connection. It refines it. You start wanting connection to feel mutual, safe, grounded, and honest. Connection that doesn't require you to perform or prove or shrink. Connection that meets you where you are, not where you pretend to be. And maybe the most important thing healing after ending has taught me is this. You don't have to rush into trusting again. Trust is built slowly, gently, through consistency, through watching how someone shows up, through noticing how your body feels around them, through seeing whether your nervous system softens or braces. And that includes trusting yourself, trusting that you'll listen if something falls off, trusting that you won't abandon yourself to keep a connection, trusting that you can walk away from what doesn't align without making yourself wrong. That trust changes everything. If you're listening to this and you're in the early stages of healing after an ending, I want you to hear this clearly. You don't need to know what comes next. You don't need to define the future. You don't need to rush into the next version of your life. You don't need to make meaning out of everything immediately. Your only job right now is to stay connected to yourself, to be gentle when waves come in, and to let grief move through you without clinging to it, to let joy show up without questioning it. Healing is happening even when it feels quiet, especially when it feels quiet. You are not regressing back because you still feel tender or emotional. You are not weak because you still care. And you're not confused because you're holding multiple truths at once. This is integration. And integration is one of the most courageous things a human being can do. because it requires presence instead of performance. And integration is one of the most courageous things a human being can do because it requires presence instead of performance. I am so grateful you're here with me this season, grateful for your willingness to sit in the in-between, grateful for your courage to choose honesty over avoidance. And I am so full of love and gratitude that I get to share my story with you. This is her subconscious blueprint where we don't just chase the dreams, we become them. And remember, you don't get what you want, you get who you are. So go out and be that version of her today. Much love and gratitude. I will see you next time.